Hey everybody! If you're looking for a lot of art action, you're in the right spot. Got a whole bunch of stuff to show you and tell you about today. I did this first section as a live video, so if you'd like to watch it in slower motion and actual real time and hear me talk through it, I will put a link in the upper right hand corner for you to do that. If you've already seen the live or you wanted to skip to what I spent most of my time on this week, you can skip to 7-Eleven. I will also add a break or a chapter break in the description, and that will skip you ahead. I thought I would still leave this in for anyone who wants to see the entire process start to finish. And this one is obviously much faster than real time. So I boiled the hour down to about 7 minutes. So I started out mixing some colors with gesso, trying something new, and this is really just to create some background, anything. So I added a bunch of colors, and I got the idea for this tool from an artist named Carolina Delavale. She goes by making.me, making.me on Instagram. And she's super cool. Love her stuff. She came up with, well, she showed me, she's the first person I've heard of, talk about these ruling pens. And what it is, it's almost like I don't know. It's like a very unfancy or a very technical fountain pen where you have to dip it into the ink or into the paint or whatever, and it will hold some paint for you so you can drag it around the paper. Very interesting. I like that it is not super smooth because I think it adds a different quality than if you were to take a marker or a pencil and draw. Here I'm using some white ink. I'm using acrylic ink for the white and the black. And it was just fun to try something totally different. So kind of making some outlines here, kind of tracing shapes or calling out shapes from the background that I drew, but not necessarily sticking to that. So this was the basis for the rest of the art that I made in this whole video. It took me a while for all of this to dry. I did try doing that. I did not like the results of smashing that at all. Um, yeah, not a huge fan of this. Also, if you're going to blow dry something, highly recommend that you stick your paper down with some masking tape onto your desk. That would have helped me have them not all go all over each other. All right, so I'm adding some watered down, well, I added some water there. I'm adding some watered down paint as a bit of a wash on top, but because the outlines are still wet, it's pulling in a ton of black, which it wasn't really a problem. It's just very different than I normally work. So you can see there's kind of black getting everywhere, which, ultimately added depth. It's a very different color palette than I normally work with. I'm sure that many of you have noted that already. Very different color palette. Rarely do I work with this many pastel colors. But it was kind of fun. I really liked in that middle section, I really liked adding the quinacridone gold. It brightened it up a lot. Kind of reminded me of like some sort of Miami color scheme, a little bit of a sunset picture. But I was really out. I don't know. I don't know. Limb is the right phrase, but I was really out in very different territory that I'm used to, which was exhilarating, honestly. I really like doing projects that cause me to use my problem solving skills so I can figure out how to turn it into something that I like looking at. So that's always my goal. I don't always achieve it, but that's always my goal. Adding black to these was fun because it's such a stark contrast from the pastels. So that was fun. Very bold changes. Um, yeah, the top right one, I don't know. I don't know. That one, probably more than any of them, got abandoned for quite some time. But I figure something out in the end to make it look at least better than that. I ended up coloring in these outlines and making shapes from them with many of these little pages. These are all about 5 by 7 pieces of watercolor paper. This is basically like I don't know, a giant grid journal. So I would fit little like 2 inch by 2 inch squares in my sketchbook for a grid journal, but this is, they're all 5 by 7 inches and they're detached, obviously. It was fun to do. This way I can move each page and turn it on its side, turn it upside down whenever I wanted to, which was also nice. So the value of working in multiples is that it gives you an opportunity to try 9 different ways of doing something. In this case, I use 9 instantly. So you're working on the same thing with the same colors, same tools, same materials are available, but you can try it 9 different ways. And since everything's ready, it doesn't really take that much more time to do 9 than it does to just do 1. There's no need to put your materials away and then take them out again. So this is all new now. The live is over. I left them how they were at that point. And I decided that I would make some massive changes with collage, especially to that upper right hand corner that I was not feeling the love for. So right off the bat, huge white piece, big change. I spent a lot of time moving paper scraps around to decide where I liked them. If I liked them more than one place, try to figure out what the best place was. I enjoyed the process of painting the black on. So this tissue paper allows me to have some sheer places, clear places, where the paint can still show through. So that golden color shows through because the tissue paper goes clear. It's funny, I didn't think it was going to take me as long as it did to make to make a couple of these that I really liked. Um, but it ended up taking me, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours this afternoon to finish this up. And I ended up with several that I really like, that I think are strong. Definitely not all 9, but all of them moved forward. So I consider that a success. And because I'm working in a series here, I want them to be related somehow. They're all the same general materials. But I don't want all of them to they don't all need to have the same materials. So I'm using that tissue paper on 4 of them, looking for some new shapes, some new colors, but focusing on a lot of white and black. It was interesting. One thing I realized yesterday during the live is I never really added any white. So I added some white, but because of the lines that turned gray quickly. So I didn't have any white areas. And typically when I want to make a bold move, I'll add some white and some black. So I added some black in some areas, but I never added white. So today I changed that mostly with collage. I added a bit of white paint here and there, but the majority of the changes that I made were with collage. And because this color palette was so different, I think that also freed me up a bit because it just feels so out there from my typical color palette and my typical color selection that it took some pressure off. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I didn't feel like I had to make something amazing out of these because it felt so far away from my comfort zone. And that made it a lot more fun. Pressure takes fun away for me. So if I don't have to have any pressure on me, I'm good. They're kind of cool. Like they're just kind of like the upper left-hand corner reminds me of Saved by the Bell. Any kids growing up in the 80s and 90s, you might relate. But it just has this like, I don't know, like Barbie early 90s quality where the color scheme, I don't know, it's just giving me a lot of nostalgia. Less so where the colors have merged with the black and it's getting dark, but when they're the straight colors, the yellow, blue, and pink, really is giving me some 80s and 90s vibes. You guys know I'm obsessed with stripes, especially black and white stripes. Had to fit some in. I don't know what it is, but I'm totally obsessed with stripes, especially black and white stripes these days. It just feels so right once I add them. And I'm adding stripes in very different ways here. Obviously, these look like little squares because of the way I cut them so narrowly. But the upper right hand corner, that's all tissue paper. So you see that the background kind of faded away. And then I've got some white and black paper. And then in the upper left hand corner, which I never affixed, is that brown paper towel that has some paintbrush. I stamped a paintbrush on it. But it also looks very similar to the one on the upper right, which is just the squares. It's funny as I watch this again, I forget where I put things. So I forget that, oh right, I did put that one, that small little bit of black and white stripe on the bottom right. But I'm watching it thinking, where did I put that? I don't remember. Did I use that one? Oh yeah, I did. Look at that. It's been a couple hours since I made these, so it's just funny to me how much different I feel about them now where they ended up versus the in progress. The in progress is always a blur. I also, you'll notice I'm using children's scissors. I have no idea where my scissors are. I'm pretty sure my kids took them somewhere, which is a big no-no. I don't want them taking my art supplies anywhere because many of them are not good for, cleanups and whatnot. If someone spills my paint, that's a problem. If you spill kid paint, way less of a problem. They don't really tend to make any washable acrylic paint. So hopefully I'll find my scissors soon because using those tiny ones that weren't even very sharp was not enjoyable. I really wanted to fit this blue piece on, and I didn't because the blue that I used in the backgrounds almost matched that same blue. And I just didn't want to use more of the same. I could have changed the color of the blue in the background, but for whatever reason, I just didn't. But the good news is that still means that blue piece with all those little fingery shapes is still available for a future collage. The white that's on that piece I just collaged is actually like 3D. It's almost like puffy paint. I used a fine liner applicator. So it was a little bit tricky to use my color shaper to stick on there. These are just some dots that I had on a different piece of paper. I think at this point, the picture in the middle was one of my favorites, and the picture horizontally on the middle right, that one that doesn't have any black on it yet, the only one that doesn't have any black on it. Something about that I really liked. But another reason I love doing things in this series all at the same time is that my favorites change. I'll add one thing and think, what do you know? And then I just keep going around. I add something new to something else, and that one becomes my favorite for a minute. The goal is to not have anything be too precious. And that's a really hard goal sometimes. Because even if something doesn't look fantastic, I still get attached to it. I think some of you know what I'm talking about. So me pulling this blue out, I was starting to think I need something like another bold change. So what can I do to add some boldness that will make sense? And I realized at some point that yesterday when I took my paints out for the live, I had red that I never ended up using. I may have used some of it to make the pink. But I don't think I did. I think that's all orange. So I got the red out and thought I'd play with that. And then I thought, hey, wait a second. I still have those ruling pens. Let's see what I can do here. I was using fluid acrylic, golden fluid acrylic, but it didn't really flow in the pen until I added some water. But just with adding that one little C shape in the middle left, then that one became my favorite instantly. Again, I shouldn't have favorites, but I don't, it's not my children, right? It's just my art, just my paintings. My favorites change constantly. That red line in the upper right also, all of a sudden that one became noticeable to me. The trick is when you're getting closer to the end, at least when I'm getting closer to the end, the trick for me is to add something that adds, right, that adds to the painting, that makes some sort of impact, but then trying to figure out what impact you want to make. Because you don't need to make a huge impact all the time. It doesn't always need to be a giant black smudge. In this case, I tried out some of my new supplies. I got some, they're called gelatos. They're they're kind of like, they look like a little bit like chapstick because of the case that they're in. So it's nice that you get to use kind of like a pastel-y type crayon thing. They're water soluble, so I'm mixing them with my gloss medium so that I can smear them around and also set the color. And you can't see quite how bright it is in the video because video doesn't do well with fluorescence, but it's basically a fluorescent orange. So I loved adding this. And a great opportunity to try out my new supplies. Has anyone else worked with gelatos? I've tried them. I mean, I've heard of them in the past, but I've never purchased them. But when I made my Blick order this week, I tossed them in and I'm so glad I did. A little birthday present to myself. Because they're water soluble, you saw in the left-hand corner, upper left-hand corner, I just wiped the whole thing away and started over with what I wanted to do design-wise. And then I softened it with some of the gloss medium. So even though I really, in a lot of these, I'm feeling out of my depth because of the colors, because of the I don't know, because of everything. I mean, the color palette did really make things feel different to me. And the lines. Typically, I don't have that much line work so early on in a painting. So those two factors really made this feel completely new to me. And it was really fun to keep working and problem solving and trying to find ways to make it, to keep it new and fresh, but also make it feel like I made it. To infuse some Jackie in there. And also for me to like it. That's also important. And it ended up, I did some close ups of 5 of them that I thought were the most successful at the end of the session. So you can see those in a little bit more detail in a couple minutes. And I did a little teeny bit of finishing work when I wasn't recording, so forgive me for that, but very minor. You know, it's funny. I think that in a lot of ways, that orange made everything, it kind of tied things together. And I think it tied things together because it was another bright color. So just the blue and the pink weren't the only bright colors. But it ties all of them together because they all have orange in it. And it's just fun. You know, again, in person, it's really a bright kind of show-stopping orange that's mixed in some places with the quinacridone gold. And it just creates this like really fun, vibrant warmth. Here I'm using a black gelato and again, some gloss medium just to create a little bit more depth. Have some darker edges and then fading to a more transparent, larger shape. But I liked having the darker edges. So all in all, this was a really fun activity. Highly recommend trying out some new random colors. I do use the gesso. I didn't need to use the gesso. I just tried it. Didn't really have an impact on me one way or the other than causing me to use tons of pastels, um, which again was fun. It was a new adventure. It was a new challenge. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Oh, this is where there's a little bit of a kind of some plastic netting I was adding on that one. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for everyone who subscribes and likes and comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys help the YouTube algorithm send my videos around to other people so that new people can see what I'm up to. So I really appreciate that. Thanks for stopping by. If you're new, comment, say hello. I'd love to know how you found me. And let me know what I can do for you. What more would you like to see? Any products you want me to use? Any specific media you want to see me use? I have a big list, but I'm compiling more. So keep me posted. Put something in the comments or send me a note. Have a wonderful day and stay tuned for these last 5 pictures. The first one, spoiler alert, is my favorite.